This could very well be the last opportunity for the Bitcoin Boulahs before the big bad movement. And in today's video, we'll be going over where those points of interest are going to be. And then, of course, we'll start it off with everyone's favorite chart, the most controversial chart of all time, which is, of course, the moon chart right on over here, which, yes, indeed, we have seen the traditionally bearish moon, if you want to call it that, fire off. This was on Tuesday, actually. And if we can go over just a very cursory history of this, you will see that it is certainly hit or miss to the downside, with the last one, yes, producing a bit of a sideways consolidation after a nearly vertical move from the last bull moon right here, but it wasn't necessarily like a major downside move. The one preceding that, yes, that was a major downside move, definitely lived up to its name, as did the one prior to that, and then the one before that was certainly a major winner, as you do see it, more or less getting the last mega high for Bitcoin. But of course, like I said, it's not perfect. You do see this one over here basically failing, calling essentially the low, as well as this one over here more or less too. So it's not a done deal. It's not necessarily as good as the Boulah moon, but in this case, I would fit this into the analysis just because it's funny, and I really like reading the lobotomized comments about it at the end of the day, because holy shit, man, at the end of the day, it's just another piece of information. But moving on and looking at perhaps something maybe a little bit more, I don't know, realistic, logical, whatever the fuck you want to call it, that would be the daily HPDR. The daily HPDR for Bitcoin has now opened below the median for the first time in quite some time. And I do look at that as a short-term corrective signal. Again, not validated until we see the most recent price action pivot violated like a little boy. But that does, kind of lead into the setup for that. So yes, basically, as long as Bitcoin is below the median, which has now moved up all the way to essentially yesterday's high at 111,000 US dollars, I would treat this one a little bit more with, I guess, what's the word that I'm looking for? A little bit more. I'd just be a little more careful in the short term, more likely to kind of fill at the bottom side of this range. And then we'll go over where that price action pivot is in just a moment here, because it is quite literally very, very close to the bottom side of that 38.2 range, which is 106,500 bucks, or essentially Sunday's low. So as long as Bitcoin's above there, there is still a hopium move here for Bitcoin to, I guess, just fucking bulldoze and sway to straight up new all-time highs. 115 and 120,000 bucks are going to be the next major areas of interest if Bitcoin does continue from here. I do think it's a little bit less likely, as I have been saying, but hey, until Bitcoin actually trades below and especially closes the daily below 106.5, it's not actionable. All of these setups are just kind of building up in the background, but they're not in any way, shape, or form tangible, which I want to be really, 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 really clear about. If you're front running these signals, you leave your Angus exposed to what is a massive bull dildo over here since basically early April. Anyways, moving on from there, I did want to, yes, go into something that we've been referencing for quite some time here. Let me actually go to this chart. Yeah, the stablecoin dominance. And the stablecoin dominance, we do expect to play opposite of course, Bitcoin and the rest of cryptocurrencies prices versus the US dollar. And we are seeing that, yes, long-term, this is bearish. Long-term, this very likely does come down to these last few major lows at least, somewhere close there. Again, these March lows from 2024, and then more recently in January of 2025 over here on the prior all-time high. But in the short term, if you are going to be looking for a potential point of a short-term reversal, a short-term bounce, this area does certainly make a lot of sense. You can see the 5-day time frame is based off that blue 377 EMA. We can see the 5-day stochastic oscillator has come all the way down to extreme lows. So, we really wouldn't take too much for this one back up. Again, when it gets to lows like this, that is overall very bearish and does imply that things, will break down further overall. But can you get a bounce in between there? Yeah. And when we go over to the daily, I think that becomes a little bit more clear. You still got a downtrend here, essentially, as long as you're below what is a Sunday's high. So, you could see a bit of a bounce, close there, but ultimately, does that actually matter for the greater trend? Not necessarily just yet. Anyways, the other big thing I wanted to point out is, of course, this chart, or not this chart in particular, but this chart right here, the weekly chart for Bitcoin. And I just want to, again, acknowledge something that we pointed out over the past couple of weeks, that Bitcoin has put in a severe amount of consecutive green dildos here. Very severe, in fact. We saw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 solidified as positive closures, which puts this current run certainly on the edge of what we have seen over the past 10 years in terms of consecutive green dildos. Now, when I go throughout the history of Bitcoin for the past 10 years, you're not really going to find any iterations where we've seen more than 7 in a row. I'll count out some of these over here, just the ones that, did get close to there or maybe even exceeded it by 1. But the last time that we got anything near this sort of a run was back in October of 2023. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 green dildos in a row. Then Bitcoin did go into a nice sideways consolidation, essentially testing that yellow 21 EMA on the weekly. Moving on from there, I'm gonna have to scroll back a lot more to find the next most recent one. This one over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so not even close actually. This one over here, 1, 2, 3, 4. This one here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so very comparable. Again, after that, Bitcoin did enter into a sideways consolidation. Yes, it did, eventually resolve to the upside, which is what I think this one will do as well. But hey, it did play out a little bit of a correction right there. This one over here coming off of the Rona dump, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so on par with the current iteration that we have. And then this, okay, definitely not this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Again, 7 right there. And then short-term correction. Do we have another one? Yeah, there's actually a few from 2017 as well. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so one more. So we do have a winner at least for the last 10 years. 5 right there, just counting them out. This one over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, we have another 8 lot, but that's going to basically do it for the last 10 years or so now. So, looking at this one and putting everything together, I do think that Bitcoin is still in a more likely place to experience a little bit of a pullback. Again, I'm not saying that this is like mega massive bearish, like relax, if you're super long cryptos, if you're super high leveraged, look, I get it. A pullback can be devastating, but for the people who have, I guess, brains, no, kidding. Okay. Look, you can use high leverage. You can do whatever the fuck you want. I'm not your dad. But for the people who are maybe a little bit more risk averse, we'll say a little bit more mature with their investment selections. Well, can you afford a bit of a pullback here? Yeah, absolutely. Probably even be healthy and prolong the overall market cycle as well. So yes, we got that. Again, no real downside is even reasonable to be expecting as long as Bitcoin's above the most recent price action pivot here at 106,500. And what else do I want to say on this one? Yeah, so let's just pretend that Bitcoin does take out this low and just see how that would maybe spill on into other time frames and get some potential downside targets if that were to happen. Well, if we go over here to the 5-day time frame, as the weekly as well, by the way, Bitcoin has closed on new all-time highs on both the 5-day and the weekly. So we do have new highs compared to, again, those January and, of course, the December highs over here, meaning that if the RSI for those for those highs is higher than the current one that we have right here, then that would present the case for some divergence. Again, divergence, not necessarily a death signal or anything like this, but can produce a nice little pullback. And more importantly, if it does get confirmed, which at minimum we really need to see Bitcoin, I would honestly say a little bit below 106, probably below 105.5. But I imagine that if Bitcoin does take out 106.5, you're probably going to see that follow as well. Then yes, you will have some bearish divergence there. And at that point, very likely going to see a move back down, maybe not even below 100, by the way, but somewhere between like 101 to 102, I think would be very, 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 very likely. If we go over here and reference the Herpa-Derpa bands, we can see that the 5-day time frame is showing that the median is coming up like pretty aggressively now. Currently situated just below $100,000, so that would be the next sort of obvious area of interest. So anywhere like basically very low $100,000 territory would probably be a minimum target for a correction, which by the way is like I think a little bit more than a 10% move from the current high at 112. So, it's like decent for a pullback. Not that much for crypto, I guess, but hey, you gotta take what you are given. You can't take what you are not given. Anyways, yes, and then all of this is encompassed by the fact that Bitcoin has the conference going on today, or yesterday, today, and then tomorrow. And when we look at the history of this Bitcoin conference, I did think that there was some interesting relationship between what happened leading up into the conference and then about 3 weeks to a month afterwards in the conference, afterwards following the conference is what I mean to say. My own lobotomized tongue, not even getting the words out properly today. But yeah, looking at the past one from June of last year, this one did move down about a little bit more than 14% in the resulting couple weeks. So that one happening relatively fast. Yes, things did come down a little bit further than that over time, but I'm really focused on the short term here. And so down about almost 15% in the next couple of weeks. Moving on to the one preceding that, we do see in May of 2023, again, similar read over here within about the next month from May to June. So a little bit less than a month. There was a nearly 10% move to the downside. And then, it was like straight fucking up before the next correction. Anyways, going to the one before that, well, maybe a bit of an outlier here. This was leading into, or coming after, I should say, the mega massive bull trap of 2022. This one leading to a significantly downside move of over 42%. This one taking about a month as well, a little bit over a month to find that next major low. Then we got this one over here this was 2021 June. Almost immediately, price came down. It came down about 15.5% as well over the next couple weeks. Over the next week and a half to 2 weeks. It did come down a little bit lower than that over time, closer to 22% almost. But there was a rally between. So, again, the immediate reaction was down is kind of the picture that I'm painting here. We got this one over here, which, I mean, there was a little bit of a correction, but it really wasn't much. If we do measure out just that short-term correction, it was actually almost, so close to 10%, 7%. So you do got that. So I guess the first move was down, but it was like very, very short-lived. Literally only just over a week, and then price did go up from there, leading into the Rona dump. And then you got this one over here from 2019 January. Again, getting a high before nearly a 10% correction over the next little bit less than a month. And if we go to the one before that, well, it's a catastrophic fall off from this move in late January of 2018 to the next mega low. Again, this one happening, over the course of about a month and coming down 55%. I'd put that on the outlier side of the scale here. Anyways, my point is that over the past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, we've seen pretty much all of these experience, at least a decent downside move. I'm saying, on the lower end, close to 10%, still in single digits, though, to be fair. And on the upper end, like a catastrophic fall. I don't think that's what's happening here, although anything is possible, obviously. But even if Bitcoin were to experience, like I said, close to a 10% correction, where would that put Bitcoin? 101 to 102 region, or let's just call it 100 to 102, something like that. That'd still play within the overall stats of that for the past 7 years. And like and like we saw several times, that's not a death sentence or anything like that. You can see things reaccumulate and then march themselves on higher, which effectively just puts in a higher low on these higher term timeframes. Which, like I said, I do think that would be a general good thing for the long term. And like I want to come back on this one. Look, if Bitcoin plays at a pullback from here, I do think that is generally going to be a mega opportunity. As far as this chart goes right here, the monthly stochastic oscillator will continue to the upside. It'll continue to be positioned to the upside for a very long time, but yes, it will be there. If Bitcoin closed this month above 102,700, 102,500, let's say, we only got a few more days left to go to see that. So, we could see Bitcoin remain above that pivot for the end of May, and then maybe play out like a very, very short-term correction soon after that, and then give another try to the upside, because I do think that June is, probably going to be good. Of course, there is one super easy way to judge if Bitcoin's just mega fucking bullish for June, which would be simply closing above that median on the monthly HPDR that is just below 111,000 US dollars. So it's got some work to do, but definitely possible. It's closer to that than it is to 102, to be fair. And then on top of that, we have actually, that's pretty much it. Long term, I still think that this is generally going to be an opportunity. Long term, you have to remember that the quarterly is one massive mega bullish engulfing dildo as it stands. Yes, we need to wait until June to get the official closures and official confirmations, but a lot of the time with these higher term timeframes, they are front runnable. Not always, you do run that risk, but higher term timeframes typically play more technically like that. And well, in order to be a bullish engulfing dildo, just need to close the June above 109,350. And if you see that, I mean, this market's gonna see some crazy, or at least in my opinion, some crazier numbers. Maybe in other people's opinions, not crazy enough. Fair enough on that. Anyways, I think that's where I want to leave this one. Again, short term, I still think that there's just more things building up for a bit of a short term pullback. Again, not actionable until you're back below this pivot right here. And even then, I mean, downside, I don't think that you can be like super aggressive with it. If it came down to like 100 or 102, that's completely fine. Even more long term, if Bitcoin came down to like 95 or 96,000 bucks, that's still a higher low. Like, keep in mind, for the weekly time frame, it's been fucking vertical. It's been fucking vertical since April in a way that we really do not see like often. 7, 8 to maybe even 8 green bars in a row. So if Bitcoin did come down here and put in a higher low at like 95, that would look great. To be honest, doesn't mean it's going to do it, but I just want to paint the picture that, hey, like, if you do see a decent correction from the current high, it's not the end of the game. Like, it's probably going to be okay. It's probably going to be fine. And yeah, also keep in mind that anytime that we saw 7 green weeks in a row, that was followed by higher prices after a short-term correction, typically. So that's not like an end of cycle signal either. So, generally, I still think that this market has higher to go. I still think that this market probably doesn't find a high until at earliest, maybe like August to September, and maybe latest like late October, something like this. So yeah, we'll see how this one kind of evolves over time. But for right now, that's kind of where I'm at. And of course, you got the next Bitcoin conference date today. So, there's a lot of big speakers at that one. I expect Price to kind of, do what Price does during these sort of events. And then, if it's going to play a pullback, probably happens at the conclusion of the event rather than during the event. But yeah, we'll update on it tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be the last day of the event. Of course, I'll be recording my video, before that even happens. But we shall have more information upon that date, and the date follows as well. And then there's the next thing, as always. Anyways, I want to wish everyone the best as always. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully Thursday.